G'day, Lee. How you going?
All right, how are you?
Good, thanks. Welcome to another episode of the Rugby League Coach podcast.
Number 3.
State of Origin last night. I think that might spark a few topics of conversation between. Mate, you don't feel well. I'm recording a podcast. Why don't you come say hello to everyone?
Hello, mate.
He doesn't feel. He wants a cuddle. Go on, Mum will give you a cuddle. All right. Well, we've just been shock intruded by my eldest son.
Well, we did say we were always going to do it in one hit, mate, and no editing. So
no editing. So the life of kids. I'm sure the parents out there will understand exactly where I'm coming from.
Mm-hmm.
As I mentioned, State of Origin last night, Lee.
Yeah.
Today is our player-based week, so we're going to be focusing on things to help players and messages for players out of that game. And I think there'll be a million places to go. What I would like to talk about to kick us off is big games like last night, how different players handle pressure and things they can do or you can as a coach for your player to help them handle that pressure. Last night, leading into the match, there was lots of talk about Jack Whiten playing in the centres. The Canberra Raiders haven't played good football this year. They had Tony Staggs and Stephen Crichton on the bench. A lot of people thought, why would you just start Stephen Crichton and put Jack Whiten off? There was a lot of pressure on his shoulders. But last night in a losing side, he was probably one of the best players on the field. He obviously handled that pressure very well. You look at the other side of that, Tony Staggs on debut, didn't necessarily play his best game.
No.
So I wanted to just talk to you and have a conversation with you about the pressures that can be on those players leading up to big games. And ways you can combat that and just, anything you have to say on that topic.
I think any individual either overanalyzes or underanalyzes. I know rugby league players that I've coached in the past who really analyse everything about a game. I was a player that used to get quite nervous. I don't think even though I was okay at rugby league and quite physical when I played, I don't think playing physical rugby league was a natural thing for me necessarily, because I don't think I was an aggressive, and I don't think I am an aggressive person. I wanted to, I had to force myself every week to get into a certain mindset. I got nervous about the game. The bigger the game, the more nervous I got. Sometimes I got nervous about the physicality. That actually helped my game though. So I found that getting nervous helped me. Other players don't analyse things at all. I got the impression that Cobbo for Queensland probably just thought he was playing in the park on a Saturday afternoon. I get the feeling Latrell Mitchell is that kind of player too, the way he approaches it. I get the impression somebody like Tony Staggs, when it's a good day for him, he has that same approach. I don't think he necessarily did that much wrong though last night. I just don't think the game came his way that much. Would you agree with that, Taylor?
I don't think he had a bad game. I don't think he had a bad game. I just didn't think he rose to the occasion, which is what we expect to see of Tony Staggs. He only really got 1 or 2 chances with the ball where he looked damaging. I don't. Typically, Tony Staggs would rise to the occasion. He would take it up, he'd get more involved. I just think he was a little reserved last night. I just think he wasn't his normal damaging attacking self.
On the flip side, I thought that the Queensland forwards really stepped up. I mean, I think being a forward is quite good to be nervous or to be amped up because you can put so much into the physical side of the game. So it's that there's an old inverted U theory about peak performance and arousal levels, and the more aroused you get from a sporting point of view, if you're at the peak of the bell-shaped curve, you get optimal performance. If you're over-aroused, then it starts to drop. I'll give you an example of over-aroused and possibly not quite having it right in the first half. I thought Cameron Munster and Daly Cherry-Evans were actually off colour a little bit in the first half. People forget. Cameron Munster kept jumping out of the defensive line, and the commentators kept bringing that up. Daly Cherry-Evans actually made some average decisions. There was some commentary about the double pump he did that put his attacker under pressure, and he sort of tried to overplay his hand. And I guess that's probably they were a little bit too pumped up for the game. And then you get players like Cobbo, who I've already mentioned. They don't need to get over-aroused. they're at risk of being under aroused for a game. You know, they're just so relaxed. Some people don't care that there's 80,000 people; they just crack on. Some people really thrive on that. I'm trying to think of some of the players that sort of exemplify that. I thought Sims didn't play that well last night.
I thought he was definitely very quiet. I thought Liam Martin had some really good touches. I think he played some good football. He didn't look like an Origin player last night to me, Liam Martin. That was the problem. He just looked like a club footballer to me in an Origin environment. Is what I thought. And I guess a New South Wales side of the years gone by, you've seen players like David Furness, Steve Menzies, Brian Fletcher, Nathan Hindmarsh in the second row role, and then Liam Martin. Would he get mentioned in those circles? And I tell you, one person I think New South Wales are missing is Boyd Cordner. He's a massive loss in the last couple of years there, and Liam Martin just didn't seem to be in that same breath to me. I thought when Cameron Murray came on the field, he added a lot more into the back row. He's somebody who thrives in that pressure cooker, I think. Your question was in and around pressure, wasn't it? One of the top examples for me, absolutely, was the Cameron Munster and Daly Cherry Evans thing. I actually thought they were over aroused a little bit, but the difference is they actually dealt with it and played better football in the second half. If you watch the game back in the cold light of day, you'll notice that. What else? I think you can talk about the team as a whole. I thought the pressure got to New South Wales as the game went on because they were playing the scoreboard a little bit, whereas Queensland grew in confidence as the game went on. I actually still think that New South Wales are a better side than Queensland, but when Queensland play good Queensland football, which is the workmanlike, industrious game where there's no ego, etc., then that is often enough to beat an under-par New South Wales side. So, in many ways, that game this week was the blueprint that you've seen so often over the last 40 years. You spoke about New South Wales not necessarily playing their own style of football, being dragged into that Queenslander tough, gritty style. Over the past 2 years, we've seen New South Wales play a brand of footy where it was just different. Tom Trebojevic just roaming the field instead of playing that traditional centre role. Just really attack heavy. Did they miss Tom Trebojevic last night? Yes. More so, I believe they missed that style. I believe they missed playing how they have played in the last couple of years that brought them so much success and those big score lines. And when they're playing hard, fast football with options through the middle of the ruck, that's when they're at their best. James Tedesco almost scored a couple of tries last night purely off backing up through the middle of the quarter where they use that attack. But when they try to go too sideways, the Yo to Luai to Cleary, it's just Queensland eat that up. They'll never lose off effort. They'll never lose off not turning up.
I felt that they didn't end up playing an attritional game or anything like that. What they ended up doing though was chasing the score, and they played quite laterally. There wasn't much change of angle, and like you said, there was a lot of success. And there's always been a lot of success of rolling through the middle in terms of speed around the middle. Where I think those tactics came a little bit unstuck last night. Because when you're coaching a game and when you're playing a game, and I know it's Players' Week, but there's going to be some cross references to coaching at times. There's phases of the game. So if you do for 10 minutes, if you're rolling through the middle, well, eventually the Queensland defence will marry up with that and cover that. When they've covered that in the middle, then you go to the edges. And I thought New South Wales got that a little bit wrong. And I tell you, it disappointed me a fair bit last night with Damien Cook. I thought his decisions when to give or go weren't quite right. I thought he was a bit lateral at times when he did go. He tried to roll out a little bit too much. And I just don't think it worked in any way, shape or form. I remember the camera was behind at one point, and I'm thinking, Damien Cook, you need to go now and you need to go pretty straight. And he didn't. He came out on a massive sort of C line. And his hips weren't square. He came out and he was looking for other players and he wanted to square up a bit later. And I thought that's a classic example of a hooker that's a bit confused about his game at the minute. And I guess it's no coincidence that he's not had the best season at South this year as well. And people are starting to think maybe he's a bit past it. Maybe he isn't. Maybe he's just a bit. He's overcomplicating his game a little bit because there were times where I thought he should have gone last night and he didn't. Times when he went and I thought that was never the play. And I guess that's another sign of pressure too. When a player is caught up in the white noise of the game and the event and whatnot. They tend to mix their decisions up. They get left and right mixed up. They get give or go mixed up. They get short pass, long pass mixed up. They revert to type a little bit, and I saw some elements of that too. I think overall, Queensland obviously deserved the victory. I do feel that what this teaches any player listening to this is that if you play with your teammates, if you have a common cause, if you buy into what the coach is offering to your team and you buy into each other, I mean, that's what gets you defensive efforts over the line. So if you're a real, you played in my teams, mate.
Yeah.
The boys in that team would die for each other, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
And in any grand final that we won, or any big game that we won, we had to spend ages defending our own goal line or our own 20 metres. And there was a few rallying cries. There was a few moments where you had to dig deep. And those moments are built by friendship, by mateship, by a common cause and believing in something bigger than yourselves. And I think that's the lesson. I wouldn't say New South Wales were playing for themselves or anything like that. I think Freddie has done a great job in doing the whole brand New South Wales thing and branding the New South Wales setup as something bigger than the sum of its parts. I think he's done a great job of that, and I don't think New South Wales have to throw the toys out of the pram. They only lost the game 16 points to 10 or whatever it was. It was only a short, small distance between the two teams. If Cameron Murray runs through the defensive line instead of stopping in the defensive line, then Paulo gets that try under the sticks. I mean, for every criticism about the New South Wales mid-defence, how bad was that Queensland defence under their own sticks then?
That was terrible. And I was so lucky that was the disallowed try. And I almost screamed at the TV. Just Cameron Murray's so much better than that. Just run through the line or get out of the way. You know what I mean? It's Anyway, that was frustrating. But one thing I picked up on what you said there was you just mentioned that where players playing for a higher cause, bonding together when they have to defend their try in big moments. Now, there's been a massive call. Certainly, I've heard it around. I know you would have. It's all in the media that New South Wales just don't get Origin. There's been something that's been said for 6-7 years that Queensland have some sort of special sauce, some sort of love and respect for each other that New South Wales don't have. Personally, it annoys me when I hear that because I think Queensland had this side full of 6 immortals, future immortals for so long, and they just won football games. Sometimes it was tight, sometimes it wasn't tight. Yeah. But they had 6 or so immortals, and they used to say, look, New South Wales just don't get it. Are you saying to me that there is a little bit of that in these teams?
No, not at all. I think it's easier for Queensland to tap into that, though.
Okay.
So traditionally, Queensland have been the underdog. Traditionally. Not actually, always, but traditionally. So even when they were winning all those games, I think they still painted themselves as the underdog, it's a natural thing. The headquarters of the game is in Sydney. 9 of the clubs are in Sydney. You watch the TV shows, they're all from Sydney. Most of the commentary is Sydney. Most of the journalists on TV are from Sydney. Everything's Sydney. You don't have to go that far to think of examples of if a Queensland half grows up and goes to a club like the Broncos or the Cowboys, they don't necessarily say he's the next Langer or the next Thurston. When a half is going well in a Sydney club and is really shining, then he's very easily thought of as being the next Peter Sterling or the next Joey Johns or whatever it may be. And I always think of somebody like Luke Brooks and the way he was beefed up in the media before he even pulled on a first grade jersey, and I feel sorry for that bloke in many ways. But there's no doubt that if you're a good New South Welshman, you'll get a lot more credit for being that player in the media than you would if you're a good Queenslander who plays for a Queensland club. I have no two ways about that. And I think that's why a club like North Queensland Cowboys right now, if they do get some stuff together, if they do some positive things in their off-season, won't necessarily start the jungle drums around because they're all the way up in Townsville. And then before everyone knows it and they've all played, oh, geez, North Queensland Cowboys are quite a good side. Hang on a minute. Before they know it, they're 10 rounds in and well ensconced in the top 4 kind of thing. So I have no doubt that, New South Wales is your sort of Real Madrid, your Galacticos kind of thing, and your Stars and the fancy Dans, or whatever way you want to package it. And Queensland is more the workers, the working class, the battlers, and I understand all that. And I think Queensland have got a really good narrative for that they hook into a lot, and I think they hook into it even when they've got the likes of Cronk and Thurston and Smith, and they really buy into it. So. That's all I'd say. To say that New South Wales don't get Origin, I think is completely wrong, because I think they get their version of Origin, and I think Fittler has done an outstanding job, if I'm honest, with it. I think he's done a lot better than everyone thought he would. And he, he's never lost a game too.
Never.
As coach, never.
Yeah, well, no, I didn't know that.
So I think now's his 5th year as coach, I think, and they've never lost a game too.
Yeah, right.
And it is a neutral venue, so in that sense, I mean, there'll be a lot of resource goes in. I just think this New South Wales setup with Brandy and Freddie and his assistants, it just seems to know its direction. If anything, I think Freddie might have got it a little wrong in some of his selections. The not picking Jake was a shock. Jake Trbojevic, Josh Adokar was a bit of a shock. If anything, he disrupted his own family there in that sense. Freddie Fittler, the team that had won the series, so convincingly out of 3 of the last 4 years, he's disrupted that a little bit. So maybe he got it wrong in the selection table. Why did he switch Cam Murray? And why did he switch front row forward? These are all things that you can analyse after the game and analyse in the negative. Maybe guilty of overthinking it a little bit. I think Queensland won a little bit because of Happy Camp buying in. I don't necessarily know if they played the absolute best football at times last night. I think anybody who says that categorically didn't really study the game very much. So I think New South Wales have got a lot more improvement in them than Queensland have. I think Queensland played an 8 out of 9 out of 10 game for themselves, and New South Wales played about 5 out of 10 games for themselves. So, but Queensland have all the cards now.
They do.
Because you still got to go to some court.
So we've spoken about nerves, big games. We've spoken about Origin last night. There was also a really good story that came out during the week about Selwyn Cobbo. Of course, Selwyn Cobbo, Gus Gould famously said, don't pick him. He gets picked. He kills it like he's killed all of his NRL games to date this year. Remember, this was a young fullback playing for Wynnum Manly in the Host Plus Cup Grand Final only last year.
Yeah.
His rise has been crazy. The story that came out this week was that Selwyn Cobbo made it to the Origin side despite having made any junior rep sides as a kid. He didn't make any. Now, I'd like to get your take on whether it be the selection that goes into the rep sides or these kids that are late bloomers per se, and just throw that subject out to you and see where you go from there.
All of the above. All of the above. We can't have a one-size-fits-all model for player development. So some players peak at a late age physically. Some play different positions. So a prop, for example, doesn't necessarily grow into their body adequately to play good football until they're of a certain weight and height. I keep going back to it, but you'd be a great case in point for that, mate. Yes, players do grow at different speeds. The other thing is, like you said, the selections and the way kids are selected and blah, 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 blah. Apparently, a lot of players in this country, in the NRL, come from something like 4% of the population. So our NRL recruitment methods aren't fantastic. The budgets are quite small when you think of other sports. When you think that English Premier League soccer teams have scouts in every continent, everywhere, and they have full dossiers on so many players and video backups of every single target they're ever looking at. A lot of these NRL clubs operate with one head of recruitment. They might be lucky to have a full-time sidekick. And there are a lot of scouts that they give a tracksuit to or something, or free tickets. There's a lot of mythology out there. And they don't cover a lot of Australia, never mind overseas. And what happens as well is that a lot of people in rep positions, coaches, managers, selectors, a lot of them have what I call a learned laziness. So I'll give you one example. I came from a system under David Waite in England where you had to justify every single decision you made as a coach, and you had to put it via a selection committee with a chairman. If you were the head coach, you were the chairman, and you listened to everybody's opinion, and it went by numbers. And instead of saying, I think Taylor Brown's a good player because he went well, you had to go, I think Taylor Brown's a good choice for this position because he's got a good, strong right shoulder tackle technique. He can step up well off his right foot and real, whatever it may be. So when I came over to Australia, I witnessed, and bear in mind, coming from England, you think that, well, Australia's this amazing country at rugby league. I've been in a leading NRL club selection meetings for juniors, and it was 8 of them were just put straight in because they were in the previous year when you were picking 20-man squads. Also, just because somebody is picked in January doesn't mean they're the best option in February, doesn't mean they're the best option in March, in April. People do change and fluctuate, particularly as kids. So the scrutiny didn't go into that. The other thing is that I was amazed that trials over here are very much people watch a game, they make decisions, and there's quite often unfair scenarios vis-a-vis, players getting game time and length of games and length of time in a certain position. It can be all disorganized, and quite often, if it's in a school-based selection process, the teacher's more concerned about making sure everything's done by 3 o'clock rather than finding the right kids, and a lot of it's done by politics outside. So somebody like Selwyn Cobbo might have been completely missed just because he didn't have an agent, just because wherever he played, he didn't have somebody to ring up somebody and say, you need to have a look at this kid. So he could have really struggled in that regard. And the other one is confidence. The third aspect is confidence. He may never have believed in himself that much, may never have pushed himself that much. You never know. He might have not been that committed to training or whatnot. But he's an outstanding athlete, and he's an outstanding addition to the NRL and Origin. And I guess the overall message to players is don't give up. One of the reasons that I always felt that the Australian system was better than the English system in that sense is you can actually be a player in this system up until the age until the age you retire, really, and still get a chance to play NRL. I mean, Damien Cook was a late bloomer. I don't think he played NRL until a late age. I know one player who, Akuso Paulo, unfortunately is in a bit of bother now, but a great friend of mine, and I hope he's well. And he came through as a junior, went to the NRL, lost his contract, actually re-fought his way in. He went via the Queensland Cup. Also some local A grade and whatnot, just decided to go again, and then he made a bit of a renaissance when he was 27, 28. Brian Carney, who played at the Titans at the Knights, or I think he signed for the Titans, never played for them, moved to the Knights. He actually didn't start playing rugby league till he was 23, 24, and happened to be playing in the Island Students team against yours truly, who was playing for England. And this was back in 98, and then he got picked up by one club, then another, then his career sort of took off, and that was a freak. He was a Gaelic footballer, I think, who just happened to have some mates who played rugby league. So the message to players is don't ever give up on your dream, and also have a think about what your dream is. I mean, we all go NRL or bust, NRL or bust, NRL or bust. You can get some money. You can get some serious money playing A-grade rugby league in this country.
Yeah.
In Australia. Serious cabbage. And you don't have to travel that far away from home to do that. And the other thing is, if you're even better than that and you are near the Q Cup, the RL or whatever it may be, or the state leagues down in New South Wales, Ron Massey, New South Wales Cup, I mean, what an amazing standard of football. What great discipline you need to play at that level. What a good thing for your life. And in addition to that, you're only one good game away from getting picked up for an NRL game. And then once you have one NRL game, it's up to you then, isn't it? I mean, Kiko Manu is a great example.
Doors just open. They just open.
Right.
Once you're in you don't even need a game. If you've trained full time, doors open for you in terms of, going to other clubs. Another good example of what you said of players that sort of come back, Anthony Cherrington, was at the Roosters, went to Penrith, didn't get a game at Penrith, went to the Dolphins, went back to Sydney, decided to have another go, and ended up playing a couple games for the Rabbitohs. And like you said, don't give up. you also mentioned can be a learned laziness in these selection committees, in these junior clubs.
Yeah.
The one thing I'd probably like to say is that if you have someone in front of you that doesn't think you're the person for them, there's two things you can do. You can persist under that person and just train as hard as you can, or you can just move on and go somewhere else. There's lots of ways you can do it. You're right. Sometimes in those junior meetings, and they might have 8-9 kids. It's just they're automatically in. They don't even have to try.
This goes right. We're already talking about the issue that I was going to bring up, so it's blended straight in. We'll talk about selection and how things go. You could be a number 9, but have 3 great number 9s in front of you.
Yeah.
If you were a number 8, there could only be 2 props that are worth looking at.
Yeah.
So you're going to get a jersey. You could be a great player, but grow up in a Penrith or a Wigan or a St Helens or a Warrington or a Bradford or a Leeds in England or Logan in Brisbane or somewhere in Townsville. Yeah, if you grew up in another area, which isn't quite as big, so if you grew up in Roosters territory where they don't have the strongest juniors, if you grew up in the bush, in some areas where there's not that much depth, but there's talent, if you grow up in Salford, Swinton, Huddersfield or something, you might be a big fish in a little pond in that sense, and then you become the standout. So geography has a lot to do with it too. I also think you get some people who are in trials who are quite selfish. So do you play selfishly or do you play as part of the team? And I know whenever I held trials with my team, I used to say to any players, I said, listen, if you play selfishly, I will actually see that as a negative against your name. You know exactly somebody who plays negative, don't you? Somebody who pushes people out of the way to take the next carry or doesn't pass the ball or just passes the ball to the mates or, that happens. And I just find quite often in Australia, a lot of the trial processes aren't clearly articulated. And this is what David Waite always used to teach his coaches about, the transparency and openness. I think when I think back to it, it's probably because he grew up in Australia and saw so many of the processes can be a little bit lethargic. Like I say, learn laziness. I've lost your face, mate.
That's the best part. You're
that's
back.
Right. Yeah, I'm back. The other thing is, if we were doing this podcast for 20 years, do you not think in 20 years' time we'd be taking things for granted a little bit? I think we're taking maybe we're taking for granted now. I don't know, but we wouldn't be thinking that creatively. We wouldn't be putting that much thought into what we say. People probably think we don't now, but we might have the same things and topics that we talked about 20 years previous. Like, you just become a bit lazier. And I think there's some people who just get jobs all the time. And one thing I noticed over here as well, like if you've got a surname, so if your dad happens to play NRL or happens to be a club legend, woe betide the coach or selectors that don't pick you if your dad has a surname. And I thought those days were well gone in life. And then I came to live and work in Australia and I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
So I guess there's many reasons why Cobbo never got picked. And I dare say anybody worth their salt selection-wise should have seen what he had. I dare say that. Did you ever any trial experiences yourself, mate, where where you either got picked and you thought you had a shoe in, where you were a shoe in and you got a leg up, or any trial experiences where you missed out?
I had I remember going to trials as a kid. I'm talking like under 12 school, like primary school level trials. I actually played with James Tedesco in primary school for a school before we went to St Greg's together. But anyway, it's a different story. In the lead up to those teams, I remember going there and just being myself and just trying to blend in with the team and do my part. And after the first game, Dad just pulled me aside and said, listen, all these kids are just taking runs and going for themselves. You may as well do the same thing.
Yeah.
Because you're right. There is that hogging the ball, and it's not so much that those kids, the selectors, don't see it. It's just that other kids that may have heaps of talent that maybe sit back and be a bit shy or just want to do the right thing, they don't get to showcase themselves at all. So you might not pick those kids, but you don't see the best of 4 other kids either.
The other thing that happens a lot over here, if somebody's played SG Ball, Harold Matthews, or Mal Meninga, Sir O'Connell, let's say there's 30 people trialing and 18 of them played rep football the year before.
Yeah.
I can almost guarantee that there's only 2 spots to play for.
Yes.
Based on so much of what I have seen.
Yes.
And so for those 12 who are aiming for that team, that is so unfair. I mean, if you think about the learned laziness and wanting to get it done quickly and not study video and all this, and taking things on its merit. I remember I picked a kid called Christian Kagiasis, right?
Kaglanosis.
Yeah, instead of Luke Brooks in a rep side as a kid. Why? Luke Brooks never trained. And he was thought to be a shoo-in, right? So I didn't pick him.
Yeah.
I have no doubt that I was slagged off left, right, and centre by people in and around the hierarchy of who I was working for. But I was a coach who wanted to do well in a competition, but I also wanted to honour a trial process.
Yeah.
For the record, we absolutely romped home in this competition, right? And Christian Kagiasis was also my half at school, so he knew my systems inside out.
Yes.
There was another situation up here in Queensland with the men's team. And I've been open about this before, so I'll say it and articulate it. It was the Ipswich Diggers men's team who never won the Chairman's Challenge before. And they played Brisbane and the Gold Coast. Anyway, the chairman invited me around to his house for a coffee to discuss the role. And I said the first thing I wanted to do was get rid of the selection committee. Right? And he backed me 100%. And I said, we've got to get away from picking the 20 best players in the competition. We've got to pick the best team. Horses for courses. Because the tournament was you either played Friday night, had Saturday off, and then played Sunday, or you played Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
So some of the best players in the competition were big, heavy men. I mean, they're struggling to play a full game of football, never mind 2 over a weekend, and they don't back up well. So I picked smaller mobile players. And there was a couple of players whose nobody to put out a joint, but luckily they were very honourable men, and we had a discussion and they understood it and blah, blah, blah. Well, the next thing was, though, we did excellently in the tournament. We lost the first one only on countback. So we won one game, drew another, and we only lost it on points difference. So that was the best they'd ever done. 2 years later, we won the whole thing at a canter. So my selection policies were always thorough. Me and my coaches, we studied tapes, we looked at every player. And we had certain criteria. They might not like to admit it, but that was actually the fairest system that has probably happened in the history of that concept, because I know for a fact that there was so much scrutiny went into it. I spent hours and hours looking at tapes and checking we got the right people. We found some smokies, and people were saying, why have you picked this guy? And then 3 weeks later, when we won the thing, they knew why. You know, like it was, yeah, I guess that's rare rather than common, Taylor. And no kid in particular should judge themselves if they miss out too harshly. I mean, you know if you're an all right player or not. You know if you're a good player or not. You know if you have a good trial or not. But you might be wearing the wrong colour socks, mate, so you don't really get in.
Absolutely. So, yeah, look, the message there, just keep trucking along. The heartfelt message there with Selwyn Cobwell was that he did miss all those teams and he kept trying and he got in there. So if you're looking for your player message, you're looking for your one take home from this podcast today, take that home with you. Tell your sons, tell your daughters. Doesn't matter if you missed the first one, doesn't matter if you missed the second one, but you won't make the third if you give up. So
Cameron Smith never played rep, mate.
Yeah.
I don't think Billy Slater did either. I mean, we can list loads.
Mate, Billy Slater rocked up to the Redcliffe Dolphins for a trial, and they said he was too small, and they sent him down the road to Norths, and the rest is history.
Correct.
Yeah.
But, you know, doesn't surprise me at all.
All right, well, Lee, before we go, Before we go, I'd like to know what's going on in rugbyleaguecoach.com.au's world this week. Where have you been? Where are you off to? And I hear you analysing some tape. You're giving something away the rest of this month.
Yeah, for the rest of June, I'm going to analyse people's tapes for free. Game tape, that is. Any kid out there, get your parents to get in touch. Admin at rugbyleaguecoach.com.au. Any coaches out there, if you want me to look at your team, I'm going to do free analysis this month, so the month of June. There's one or two stipulations. I'm not going to study somebody's whole season for free, but I'll give some pointers and then hopefully put a few on social media. And what I'm hoping is that I'd love to analyse somebody's game, and then I'm getting picked up by somebody, a rugby league YouTube star. That's another thing too. When we're talking about recruitment, right? There's top stars now that get found on YouTube. So why aren't NRL players getting found on YouTube?
I don't know.
Or Super League players, Well, so we can have multi-million-pound or dollar industries based on somebody who sings a song or does a dance on YouTube. Yet we can't find somebody to truck a ball up around the ruck. Well,
I reckon we can. If Kalen Ponga's highlights when he first came out, they were huge. They were all over YouTube, and that caused him to get one of the biggest contracts in history. So it's maybe that's it. If you're out there and you put yourself a little highlight reel together, send it to Leroy, and you might go viral. Well, I also want to give a quick shout out before we finish, Lee, to Chris Mason.
Okay,
he's a fella from my junior rugby league club at St Christopher's, and he watches your stuff religiously.
Good lad.
And the only reason I found out is because he pulled up my old man at the pub, and down in Revesby there in Sydney. I think it was at Padstow or the Diggers or something like that, and said he watched an interview with me and a bloke called the rugby league coach.
Mr. RL coach. Yeah.
Mr. RL coach. So,
nice.
Meso, thanks for tuning in, mate.
Thanks for watching, mate, and appreciate your support, Meso.
Maybe you can send Lee one of your favourite Newtown Jets clips, and he can break it down for you.
He's his team.
He loves
the blue bags are coming, Newtown.
Mate, he's still. I see every photo I see of Meso is with the Colquhouns down at Henson Park. They're watching them go around in the New South Wales Cup. So he's a big time.
I always crack up. They still announce that crowd, the last crowd they ever had in the Winfield Cup, as it was, or whatever the sponsor was back then. But now the NRL, they always announce the crowd as I think it's 8,000 or something, even though there's clearly like 400 people there. They go, and the crowd today is 8,000.
A little bit of GST never hurt anyone. Everyone likes salt and pepper on their steak.
That's right. Well, you take care, lad.
You too, mate. And I'll see you in Queensland League scene, and then I'll see you next. I'm going to get a proper setup next week, mate. You'll watch. I'll have a new camera. I'll have headphones. I'll have a mic.
Oh, hello.
Yeah, it'll be the full shebang. All right, mate. See you, mate.